It's trying to connect. Okay. Now we're live, but I fear that we're going to get this echoing.
Can you turn your microphone off on one of them?
Yeah.
Look at me pretending like I know how to do that.
Oh, okay. So it is showing that we're live.
Oh, good.
Probably going to start echoing in a sec. Okay. Now, Mike. Okay. I wonder if, let's see. We should be live. Can you say something? Let's see.
Hello. Hello.
Oh, is it working? Okay. If anybody's joining me, pop in and say hello. Hello.
Good morning. Technical difficulties.
Very technical difficulties. Okay, so we're gonna try this. All right. Morning, everybody. Unfortunately, I'm live on my Facebook page and not my group, but I'm sure I'll get that posted to you guys soon. But anyways, I am joining Katie Sackman this morning. Hi, Katie.
Good morning.
So Katie Sackman is a former brand manager at Williamson Home. She has been working in the art licensing industry for what, like maybe over about 8 years with Williamson, right?
Pretty close to 8 years, yeah.
Yeah.
The licensing department started there. I remember because we started right after my son was born. So it's about 5, 6 years old at Williamson, the licensing department. Yeah.
And prior to working at Williamson, this is interesting. So the whole idea that I want you on this live is to share your journey because it's very inspiring for my students who want to start a career, with art, and there's so many different fields. But you, in fact, are a designer, an
Yes.
artist, and you designed ugly sweaters, Christmas sweaters.
Yeah, I have a really wide range of experience. And so my actual degree is in fashion design. So always loved clothes. Like I know that's such a generic answer, but I really have always loved clothes and always have been into that. I used to make dresses for my Barbies and, my American Girl doll and all that. And so went to school, got my degree in fashion design. And everyone's like, oh, so you're moving to New York. And I live in St. Louis. And I was like, oh my gosh, no way. New York's so scary, right? So I ended up getting a job for Dillard's, the department stores, and moved to Little Rock, Arkansas. And I do like to joke that my first job was designing ugly Christmas sweaters because that's what it was. They weren't ugly then. They were like really what everyone wore. But I learned about how to knit sweaters, and I had to approve what's called knit downs, where we'd see like different pieces of art. And, each year we know we need one with cats, one with dogs, one with a manger scene, one with angels, and, just approving those colors. Then I was laid off. There was a huge bubble. We had hired so many people, and then they just kept laying people off left and right. And it was my first job that I'd ever been laid off from or anything. So I'm, 20 something years old, calling my mom, crying. I'm like, what do I do? I don't have a job. How will I pay my bills? And she's like, well, Kate, there's this thing called unemployment. So I learned about that real fast. I had no idea what that was. Worked really hard to try and find something. I'm like, it's not very likely that I'm going to be staying in Arkansas, right?
Yeah.
So found a job and moved to Indianapolis, and I was working for a dancewear company there, which was really cool. So designing prints and patterns for gymnastics and dance leotard, designing the bodies, like the leotards themselves and stuff. Also working a lot on their photo shoots. So they made catalogs. I would help with the photo shoots, go scout models, which is like basically going to little kids' dance studios and seeing which little girls were cute and outgoing and would do well for photo shoots. doing those. So did that for a while. I knew that I eventually wanted to come back to St. Louis. And one of our fabric vendors also worked with a dancewear company here in St. Louis and said, hey, whenever you want to move back, let me know. And so he put me in touch, and I flew in just for an interview to get to meet people. And then like 2 days later, they're like, we'd like to relocate you and move you back. And we were like, okay, I guess we're coming back to St. Louis.
Wow. And you're in St. Louis right now, just
Yes,
so
I'm
everybody
currently
knows.
in St. Louis. Yeah, we have been back. We moved back in 2010, I think, 11. So we've been back for a minute.
So were you married at that time?
No, I wasn't married yet.
Oh, okay.
I know, that's the craziest thing. So the other love story part, my husband and I had barely known each other a year, and I was like, well, I got a job in Little Rock, and he's like, let's go. So we moved to Little Rock.
Your ride or die. He was ready to take the ride.
Yeah, he was like, let's do this, because he's an architect. So he's like, he draws houses. So we joke that our kids are going to be like scientists or something, because we're both so creative, but they're not. They're indeed going to be creative children.
Yeah,
as well.
that's no doubt. You've got two creatives. There's like no room in the middle of that spectrum. So then
Yeah.
like, it's interesting, you were in fashion design and that's where your career kind of led you, but how
Right.
did you make that move into, home decor?
So there was a little leeway before we got there, right? Moved back to St. Louis, worked for the dancewear company for a long time. Then they downsized too. I lost my job again there. And I'm like, we're back in St. Louis. We don't want to leave. Like, what other transferable skills do I have? Like, how do I go from fashion? There were other opportunities here, but nothing that like really excited me. So I was like, well, I know how to do Illustrator. I know how to do Photoshop. I know how to draw. Like, what else can I do with that? Right.
You were determined to stick to something creative. Like
Oh,
you
yeah.
didn't want to go and try and just find anything to keep you afloat.
No, there's no way. Like, I had to do something creative. I knew I wouldn't be happy if I didn't. I knew I wouldn't feel fulfilled. So I found a job with a men's hat company. So I designed men's headwear for a minute. It was interesting. It was my least favorite of all my jobs, but
So,
it was,
but
it was still
it's like
creative.
I love your list of careers because like it's just nice to hear that there's jobs out there like this because no one would know, right? And I think we talked about this before. We got on a call once and I had asked you about your story and you told me that about you were designing ugly sweaters. I forgot about the dance one, but then the hats. I was like,
Yeah.
how do you even find a job for like designing hats?
I was desperate. I wanted anything to stay in St. Louis. We didn't want to move again. We're like, we're back. We want to be here. I think at that point we got married. So we're like, we're starting our family and stuff. Both our families are here, our siblings, our parents. So we're like, we want to start our family. We're going to need that help. We're not ready to move. So I did hats for a little bit. And then, this is where it took the way opposite turn. I was like, okay, what else can I do? I can do graphic design. I ended up finding a job with a fragrance goods company. So they did candles, lotions, soaps, all that kind of stuff. And that was so cool. Like you said with the hats, who thinks they're going to go into work every day and pick out fragrances? Like, I'm going to pick out the smell that this new fragrance that we're adding. And it's so cool. Like, I'd have to like talk to perfume houses and say like, okay, what fragrances are trending? Like, what are
Wow.
people buying? What are people interested in? And I learned a lot of really cool stuff there. They're like certain smells that everyone's nose can't smell or aren't as strong, and just like really interesting stuff.
So your job was actually to like smell scents and meet with these people and like I'm thinking you were maybe designing the labels or something.
Oh no, I did all of that. All of that.
Oh,
I
you
was
did
like,
that too. Oh, okay. So you're pairing up
I
the
was
designs
design
with the
and
scent.
product development. All of it.
Okay. And there's a lot involved in product development because you have to kind of know every aspect of that development from like conception to execution, right?
Yes, so that was really interesting. It was an interesting time for the company too, because the woman who had started it was phasing herself out. She had sold it to someone else. So like he was learning, she was trying to instill all her knowledge and leave. and I was new there coming into something I hadn't done. So it was like a lot of dump of information, and it was just really cool because like, okay, I'm like, all right, this new candle is gonna be coffee vanilla, and now we got to find the shape for it to go in, and then we got to decide what other core products we're going to add it to. Are we just doing a candle? Are we doing candle soap lotion? Are we, all these things? And then while I was there, we introduced bath bombs because that was kind of when bath bombs were exploding. Everyone wanted them. We did some chapsticks. Chapsticks were really fun to work on because we had to figure out like what kind of display box we wanted to put them in. Like, do we want just where they like sit in a roll? So I worked with a box company, which was really cool because I had never done that before. It was like making a puzzle to figure out how many bottles of chapstick were going to go in each one. And then they would like create the box for me. And we had to see how we could fold it because it was all done here in St. Louis. And, like the people who worked in the factory would fold the box up and put each chapstick in. So it had to be fairly easy to figure out how to do. And then once it got to the customer, it had to just be like a lid that would come off. So that
So
was cool.
was everything you did in-house? Like, I'm gonna try and tie in the art licensing here
Yeah.
because did you guys outsource the designs for the boxes, or was everything created in-house with the
All
team?
the labels and stuff I did too. Just
Wow.
like, yeah, like I mean they were pretty simple for the most part and kind of like established brand guidelines. So that helped. But knowing this is I'm like a creative, but I also love rules. So it's really weird. So like
You're
when
one of
that's I think
those.
that's where we'll go into the brand part. Like that's what I really loved about brand licensing and stuff because they're like, here's your rule book. This is what you need to follow, but you can break rules, but you need to know these rules so you know how you can break them. And like, I loved the uniformity of stuff like that. I'm like, okay, this label has to fit on a 5-ounce bottle and a huge thing of bath salt. Like, how do you make them the same? And, stuff like that was really interesting. And so that was great. Did that for a while. After I had my daughter, I knew, being that I was one of two people, it was very, very, very daunting. And I knew that it wasn't the best job to have a child and, be working in. So
Yeah.
um, I moved on there, and that's where I came to Williamson Home, where
Did
I met.
you at any point take a break between that job and like, spending time with your daughter a little bit at the time, or did you go right into work?
Um, for the most part, yeah. Like I went on an interview 8 months pregnant, and I
Oh,
was like, they can't ever say anything. So I was like, we probably have to address the elephant in the room.
yeah. And
Obviously,
this was with Williamson?
no, it was a different company. I didn't,
Oh.
I didn't get that job. Shocker.
It's funny because I have a funny story that I can relate to. So when we relocated from Vancouver, British Columbia to Arizona in 2008, and I'd gotten pregnant shortly after that. Now, I was licensing my art with CAP at the time, right? Still, and things were still going good. But that year, the recession hit, and of course,
Yeah.
sales and home decor were like, so I was not bringing in any income. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll try and get a little something creative on the side, right? Because,
Uh-huh.
like, so I don't get bored, I can bring a little bit of money. And I like you, I'm looking for creative jobs because I'm thinking there's no way I can go to do administration or real estate again.
Right.
Which is
Right.
funny because I did go back to real estate for a bit,
You're
but
like, I could, but would it make
I
me happy?
could. Do I want to? No. Should I? Probably. But so I applied for a job cookie decorating.
Oh.
And I was literally like 7 months pregnant. So my belly's out like this. So I go in, and like I had to sit down and they gave me all these cookies and I had to like, design them so they could see if I had the skill, which I thought I was pretty good at. But like you, I was like this. I was about to have a baby in 3 months. And I had said the same thing. I said, I know you're probably wondering, I am pregnant. Needless to say, I did not get the job. I thought that was probably going to be a bust anyways, right?
Yeah. You're like,
Who's,
I just needed
who's going to hire
something.
somebody to work for 3 months? Then they're out.
Yes. No, interviewed with Williamson when Sutton was like 4 weeks old.
Aw.
And I started when she was 6 weeks old. And everybody was like, wait, you just had a baby? I was like, yeah, but I had, you got to do what you got to do. I wasn't going to continue where I was before because it was just too stringent and too much work to raise a new family. So I had to do what was right. Came to Williamson, started here designing in graphic design. So, came in and we had the two offices, one in St. Louis and one in Mount Vernon. And it was great and stuff, but like the two offices were really separate. So we worked really hard bringing them together. Like we had two different design teams that were like kind of operating the same, but kind of not. So I'm
Were
like,
they
all right,
focusing on different products, or was it
different.
still
I
decor?
think I've been through so many iterations of how we worked, and you gotta pivot with what works best for the company at that time. I think at that point, Mount Vernon was primarily focusing on Hobby Lobby, and the St. Louis office was trying to grow into other retailers.
So you
So
were like working for a specific client, and
a
then you're
little bit
kind
more, yeah.
of, okay.
Yeah. But I
So
mean, it's
just,
all kind of the same, like,
yeah.
yes, Hobby Lobby has a certain look, and then Kirkland's does, and some of them can waterfall, but back then it was very like more people had more trend guides for us to work from. Like At Home is a huge, like, they love their trends and they send out decks and books and like, hey, let's work on those. So St. Louis did a lot of that, following the deck that
So
they would send.
I'm going to interject here for a second, just to
Yes.
remind the viewers that Williamson Home is a licensing company that I do work with. I've been with them for almost 4 years now. I worked closely with Katie, and if you recognize her beautiful face, you remember you helped me with the book, An Artist's
Yeah.
Guide to Licensing Your Art, because I wanted not only my perspective from an artist, but from somebody in the industry, from their perspective, because Katie is one of those faces where she would get submissions, right? You would see the submissions come in from artists, and then you kind of gave me some insight on what you're looking for, and we collaborated to kind of come up with like this structure, so that if you're thinking of getting into the industry, these are the things that would be very helpful to know, and this is how you can start building your portfolio. This is what you're looking for. So I just wanted to remind the viewers who you were, even though I have kind of like, I've spilled the tea a little bit, so, I keep kind of dropping here and there, Katie from Williamson. But it's always nice, and I've been promising them for years to bring you on so you could give a little bit of insight into that area. Like,
Yeah.
it's almost like I see a wall, right? Like there's the artists and then the licensors. And and everybody's afraid of the licensors. They're like, oh, like, it's intimidating.
It
So
is.
it's nice to have a face come on and they can see that you're a nice person, you're fun, you're easy to talk to, you can ask questions. Um,
Yes.
and I think it's good to kind of hear, if I would love to hear like a typical maybe situation where you get a submission in
Mhm.
from an artist, and what do you look for, and what kind of goes through your mind when you see
Sure.
these submissions?
Yeah.
So, and you
So,
can give
there
a
are like
couple
a couple,
situations,
yeah, there
like
are a
maybe
couple
a yes
ways.
situation and a no situation,
Oh.
and be honest, because
Yeah.
you know
I mean, everybody, it's your art. So you're proud of it and you love it and you think it's amazing and wonderful. And so we always try to be as, cognizant of that as we can. But the reality is we're selling in big box retailers. So we have to think about what they would be interested in. And sometimes it is really hard to set aside your personal preference and what the customer's going to want. But like, Yvette said, there is a huge wall up because it's like you're the artist and you design. You have to get it to someone like myself that is the front line. Then we have to present it to our internal product development team that also is like picking and choosing stuff because they're the experts of, what subject matter they're working on. Then they put the catalog together. Then we present that to a buyer who has to buy into it. And then the buyer has to have their boss or whomever sign off on it, right? Then it finally gets into the retail store. So there is, I feel you. There is a lot of stop gates to get through. Before you even get to a retailer. So just getting to know a company like this, or getting in front of someone, when I was trying to find brands, like if we were trying to do Ford, just getting someone to answer me and like talk to a real person instead of fill out a form or submission was
Yeah.
so great. Yeah, because I'm like,
there's a lot of ghosting that happens
yes,
in the process. And
and
it is interesting because sometimes, I mean, like, I know I have had work that I did maybe like 3 years ago, and it was presented, it wasn't picked up, and then it comes back around. Hey, remember those like cows you did? Or,
yes,
we want to put a presentation, and then it gets picked up. So from the time you develop something, it might be 3 years before you actually see it in the store.
which is insane,
Yeah, it is.
right?
But another thing I think is important, like when you're getting these submissions in, like you have a specific, so just so my students understand,
Yeah.
there are specific things that your buyers are looking for at that time. So if somebody
Yeah.
sends a submission in and the art doesn't relate to anything you're looking for, what are the chances of you guys saying, hey, let's work with this artist?
It depends. So there are I hate it because it's never a clear-cut answer, right?
No, it's
I'll
not.
dance around everything all day because you never know. You don't want to close out anything. You don't want to say absolutely not, because you never know. Like, this person may have submitted sunflowers when you're looking for Santas, but if you look at their art and you're like, wow, this is really great. I see something here. I know this person understands what the customer's looking for. Or sometimes we would just see someone and be like, oh my God, that is so Hobby Lobby. And we'd be like, we have to work with that person regardless of what they presented to us. And then sometimes I'm like, okay, I know that I'm going to need sunflowers in 3 months. So I'll save that to the side, or I'll tell the person, hey, we don't need sunflowers right now. We're looking for Santas. Do you have anything? Do you like Santas? Do you want to do that? If there's someone I'm interested in working with. Otherwise, I'm like, hey, we don't need sunflowers for 3 months. Message me back then, right?
Oh, okay.
Kind of putting it on them to remind themselves to come back to me. Shows me they're interested. They want to work with me. But then there is a fine line. We've had many people where I'm like, hey, this just isn't right. Like, their style wasn't right for our customer base, because while Hobby Lobby is a huge retail partner, they're not going for like really cool abstracts. They're not that cool. They're not. They want cows with baseball hats, or they want the sunflowers, or they want, like, they're probably
Kids
never going to do
decor
that.
and the coastal stuff, like they're
Yeah.
kind of themes that they always fulfill.
The farmhouse. Yeah, they
Yeah.
have specific themes. So like, I could think this abstract is the coolest thing in the world. And like, if I look at your portfolio and it's mostly that same vibe, or like sharp edges, or, well, it's really cool, I'm going to be like, hey, you are too cool for what we're selling here. Like, I personally like it, but I don't want to waste your time. Like,
Yeah.
it's never going to work with us.
It's really important. I always tell my students, if there is a company that you want to work for, it's very important to either A, look at their portfolio to see what kind of art they're representing, or B, find out who they're selling to and go to those stores and see what kind of art is in their store. Because you need to find a partner where your art fits in. You don't necessarily have to change your style. You probably have to adapt. And as every artist knows, like, you have to continually grow and change your style. Like, it's going to get better and better every time you create, right?
Right.
It's just
Right.
naturally change. So it's, I'm always trying to make sure that I don't discourage my students. If you get a no, it doesn't mean you're not good enough or you should give up.
Right.
You can find the perfect pairing. Like, it's like a matchmaking situation, like, honestly.
Yeah.
But, you know, Katie's giving good tips too, is like, pay attention. If you're getting a response back from the company you're submitting from, that's a good sign. Don't give up on that.
Yeah.
And pick up on the cues and really pay attention to the detail and what they're asking for. And hey, if she says, you know, for this situation, if you sent sunflowers and they're looking for Santas and she says, hey, you got Santas, don't respond saying, no, I don't got Santas. I get on your butt and paint some Santas and say, yeah, here, check these out. Because that is like a little in. It doesn't mean it's going to get picked up, but it's showing, okay, I'm willing to try and work. And she, you know, well, I say she because she's not there anymore, but the person behind the email and
Yeah.
their team could be saying, you know, there's something there. Let's try and see if we can work something out. Or maybe now is not the time because maybe it's busy. Reach back out later.
Yeah.
Listen to those cues.
Yeah. And I always like tried to be as upfront with people as I can. I'm like, you know, sometimes if you are lucky, it happens fast. You know what I mean? Like they're like, oh, it's funny because I always laugh. Like there's you know it when you see it, right? The buyer knows it when they see it. And you're
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I know that you know, because we do make sure we understand what's selling well, what they did pick but not buy, and kind of try and identify why. And then we work with the artists like, hey, Yvette, we know that these quirky animals and all these other situations are selling well. Let's do more. We know that people are really gravitating towards whatever goats instead of cows now. Let's figure out some cows together, you know? And then you could even come to someone, like sometimes I will say like, hey, what is selling well on your website? Or like I would do that with a lot of our photography partners. I'm like, what are you selling the best of on your website so that we can like present that to Hobby Lobby? And that would be like a good talking point for our sales team. I'd be like, hey, so and so has this barn selling really well, and sometimes we like to put the story behind it because art is emotional, and you know, people do, you see it and you're drawn in and you like it.
Connect.
Yeah, it's like
The story. Yeah.
and so we would do like sometimes we'd have artist bios, or sometimes we just tell the buyer like, hey, this couple who takes pictures was celebrating their anniversary trip and they took all these cool pictures of the ocean, and it's this ocean and blah blah blah. And sometimes they feel the connection to that and they put that in their, you know, so their collection. So there's just a lot of different ways. You just have to find the connection with someone. I know probably Yvette and I have talked about that before. Like
Yeah.
finding that connection, being friendly, being open, listening to what people are saying, receiving that, thinking about it, you know,
That's not
processing
easy
it.
for artists either. Like, especially artists that already do art and they have their way. And we talk about like that. That's why I love my group and my students who join me, because I'm constantly letting them know that art is an evolution. Everybody's very supportive in giving feedback on what can be improved and changed. It's not to be taken in a negative context. It's actually for helping and growing. And it really is a partnership between the artist and whoever you're working with. You have to remember they're your advocate and they want you to sell just as much as they want to sell, because it helps us all. Like, it helps us all make money. So, but they're the little fly on the wall that gets all the intel from their buyers and what they want. So you want to listen to what they're telling you they need and be open to making those changes. As an artist, we find tricks on how to prevent ourselves from repainting something over. And I share some of those tricks with my students. So the more experienced you get, the more you can find ways to really monetize on your art in a lot of different ways to get that across a lot of different like platforms or
Yeah.
styles, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah, this, you got to have this, and this is what you have when you're in a partnership, is you're going to have communication. You're not alone. You've got someone supporting you. You've got someone giving you like wonderful inspiration guides and like mood boards and like color. And
Mhm.
sometimes, like there's so many times where you guys have actually did the little, was that you doing the little doodles? The illustrations? No? Somebody would
Oh,
say
I don't know.
hobbies, somebody would send
Who
me,
knows? I mean,
yeah, like I would get a little illustration of what they actually want, like the little cow in the composition with, oh, and then little notes. And it makes it so easy.
yeah, yeah.
Little color swatch. Other times they'll just send like a color strip with kind of inspiration or things that might already be in their store, and you got to kind of pick up those cues. So there's lots of different ways that they will, help you in
Yeah, I
achieving.
mean that's a good thing too of that. Like let's say you do get a piece in the store and it sells well. Well, what's the next iteration of that? That person liked that. What are they going to buy next? Or if it got in this store, what other stores has a similar vibe or feel to where your art is? Can you take something like that that you know sold well and present it to another store, present it to another customer and try and get that in there too. We do a lot of that. Like we've had this piece, I think this says kitchen or pantry in Hobby Lobby forever. And every year we try and find a new iteration to get that same, volume from it. Like what is next? Are people still buying this kitchen thing? Or are they ready to move on to home? Or are they ready to take no more letters and now they want art but the same vibe? So it's like seeing what sells well and how to do the next iteration of that and get the same, value that you did with that. Or if it's the
Yeah.
same, if let's say you're in Hobby Lobby and you're like, okay, I know at home kind of is like this too. Maybe they'd like a version of this.
And we do different versions of things. Like you can, oh, let's talk about this. So say you have a piece of art that because I'm going to use like one of my cows, for example, because we've used the same cow like many, many times, but we just changed it up. So I want to talk about, because we've talked about copyright and all that kind of stuff, but it's my piece and I have a cow. Can we sell the same cow to the same store? I mean, I know the answer to this. I'm going to ask you.
Well, it
But
depends on the buyer and the store and do they care about, being the only
so
one
what
with
do
it and
we need
stuff.
to do? Can we take that same cow? What do we need to do to make that cow different?
Yeah, so Yvette was really good. She had her cow and she would put a baseball hat on the same cow or then put a scarf on him for winter or I don't know, give it a hot dog for summer. But
Maybe
it's the
like
same,
shorten the horns on one
yeah.
or
It's the
change the
same
color.
base cow for the most part and
Yeah.
she's just like essentially kind of like paper dolls putting new things on it cuz she knows that cow has sold. So what else can we make that cow do? Does he need another friend? Does he need a flower crown? What can we do to this cow next? Because he's going to keep selling.
Yeah.
Does he
And these
now
are
need
tips and tricks that you want to like just keep in your little tickle trunk so that when you do, if you do get picked up by a licensing company and there is something, that gets picked up and they're kind of on that trend, then you can use these little tips to help you like monetize on that piece of art.
Mhm.
And I think I've talked about, and I won't get into like my method of it because we've talked about that, but just know that even though you created something even years ago, it could still work in the future. And like, really, art kind of, it does like this full circle, right?
Oh yeah. I would say that to artists all the time that I would
Yeah.
talk to when we'd have like introduction calls. I'd be like, just because it's not new to you, I've never seen it. Our customers have never seen it. It's totally new to them. You may think that this is old and tired and boring. I may look at it and be like, yes, that's what we want. Because think about it, Hobby Lobby is at least 2 years behind the major trends and stuff. So like you may have done that when you saw it 2 years ago, and now it's finally trickling to the Midwest and the 80 percenters of people, and now they want it. So, like, always put everything out there. Like, even if you're just like,
What
oh,
about, yeah, the ugly
I
art
think
you
this
don't
is
like?
cool. Yeah.
Hey,
It's
the
going to be
art
the
you
one that
don't
you don't
like.
like, and they're going to pick it.
Yeah. It happens all the time. I say it all the time. You've heard it from Katie. If you
We
don't
will-
like your art, don't throw it out. You
No,
never
no.
know.
Well, and then if you could get the feedback from somebody else, because as as a designer too, you get stuck. You get so focused on something, and you're like, I just like don't love this, and I know that I need to just take a step away from it. I need to walk away. I need to move on something else. Give my brain a minute from that. 9 times out of 10, I come back and I'm like, this is what needed to be done here. This is what I needed to do different. You just get like down that rabbit hole, and you're so
Mhm.
focused on one certain way it should go. You need to take a step back for a second, let that piece sit there and think about something else, flip your laundry, whatever you need to be doing. Come back, and most of the time you can see what needed to change, or you'll be flipping
It'll
your
just
laundry and
flip.
you'll get that light bulb.
Or wait, has this ever happened to you when you're in bed and you wake up in the middle of the night and it hits you then?
No,
And
I'm
you can't
doped
sleep?
up on Benadryl now because my
Oh,
allergies are so bad.
oh no, it happens to me. Like when I'm in this creative mode and I get stuck and I'll wake up at 3 in the morning and I'm like, I can't sleep and I'm trying to get back to sleep and an hour goes and I just go into the studio and I just have to tweak it. Like, and then I'll go
See?
back to bed and I feel like poop it the next day because I'm like, dry.
Yeah. I mean, it's keep going, and if you're stuck, stop and then give it a minute. And if you keep trying, maybe you're just trying to force something. That happens
Yeah.
too. You think that this is the best idea. Just like when you pick an outfit out in your head, you're like, "Ooh, that's gonna be so cute," and you put it on, and you're like, "Oh man, maybe
Doesn't
it
look
needs
how I,
to, leave it alone for a month or so, and then come back to your painting or whatever." And then maybe you're
yeah.
like, "Yeah, that's not gonna work," or that'll give you a good idea for something else. You
And it's
never know.
okay to have like numerous projects going at one time. I mean, we are multitaskers, right? Like you don't have to sit focused on something. If something's not working, put it aside. I have like a box. My closet is actually pretty organized. And of course it's behind the doors. Everything in front of the doors that I see is a disaster. Like I can't even show you my workspace right now. But I have like this box of paintings that I never finished.
Mhm.
Like I might have started the background and drew, and actually I have a few. It's so funny. I have to keep going into my tickle trunk to dig things up every once in a while. And I came across like it was something you guys requested, and then we ixnayed. One was like a cow on a toilet. It's still in there, by the way, reading the newspaper. Yeah, this is
I
what they,
remember. I
yeah. And then
remember.
another one, there was like a quirky wilderness, and it's like a moose in a canoe with a bear, and they're actually fishing with rods. But I never
Oh, but
finished.
you didn't you do like
Oh,
bears?
the bears in the campers
Yes.
camping and the s'mores.
Yeah.
But I've got like this box of like some that are drawn, some that are half painted. And every once in a while, like, when I'm looking to scan certain things for certain partners, I come across them and I'm like, hey, I can use that and I can build on this, right? Like I don't throw it out because at some point I feel like I'm going to come across it. And this is years down the road. So just keep a little tickle trunk with your designs and inspiration because it can spark a little something.
It may be time for animals on the toilet again.
There may be, yeah. Well, apparently there was. I don't know. It didn't like we didn't get to that point, but I do see them in Hobby Lobby.
Yeah, there was a
Yeah,
moment for that.
it was a moment, probably short. But okay, so I do want to. Okay, so we talked about art licensing. You work in your little journey, but because I don't even know. I don't know what's going on. I
I know.
don't know
It
what's
came on
happening.
fast. I'll be honest.
My Katie's leaving. I'm like, what?
No, it shocked me too. It was, I had been there almost 8 years, so it was really scary to leave. It
Yeah,
was, I'm not gonna lie. And it was a really hard decision to make. I asked the company that I came to, like, I need a couple more days. Like, can I? Because just like out of nowhere, I was like, okay, this sounds cool, like a product design position. And I was like, okay, like I can do that. And then talking to them, fully remote, which we were mostly remote before. So I had been used to fully remote. And I was like, hey, like the most important thing is to me like the flexibility. Because right now I take my kids to school, I pick them up. We're a good Catholic school, so we have all this volunteer stuff we have to do.
You're a
So I
busy
wanted to make
mom.
sure, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm a working mom, like a full-time
you're a
working
working
mom.
mom. Yeah,
And my husband works full-time too, but he drives 30 minutes to work. So like if the kids are sick,
you're the one to
unfortunately,
call.
it
Yeah,
falls on me.
yeah.
So I wanted to make sure I still had that flexibility and all of that. And they're like, absolutely. So it was the same stuff that the same um great things that I had at Williamson, the flexibility and working from home and all of that. But it was something new. And I was not looking for a design job. I was not. I
So,
would
but
have
you're
gone,
designing again, like you're getting
yeah,
back into your craft and like
I
you're
am.
using your hands and can you
I would have
tell us what
gone,
you're designing? Is it like product based across? Can you
it's
tell us where you're
crazy.
working?
It's that so they sell on QVC. I will say that. It's
Ah,
product that is sold on QVC,
okay.
mostly like kitchen products. So like coffee mugs, aprons, cookware and stuff like that. So it's really cool. And what I love is it's kind of like a little bit of a cult following. So they already have
Yeah.
their patterns and stuff that people love. So it's really just coming like I mean, I think I've been there a month today. So I'm learning a ton. Like, I have a lot of different background, but like I've never done cookware. So I'm learning we were working on these bowls that were characters, like Halloween characters, and
Yep.
their heads were the bowl, learning like how to make sure the product is stable. And so like the factories actually literally mold it out of clay and I have to approve it.
Okay, so this is interesting. You're telling me this, and now I'm learning because I actually just licensed a product line of this, and I was wondering how they were going to do this. Like, why are they taking my nut? Like, how are they going to turn the nutcracker into a 3D cup?
Yeah,
So
it's
that's what
so
they're
cool.
actually physically artists that like mold the design from like
Yeah.
a flat 2D drawing.
Isn't that crazy? It's so crazy.
Whoa, that
Yeah,
sounds
so
like
they're
way more
literally
work
molding
than
it.
like,
I have to look at it, and this is the part that I like. Like, I have to compare the 3D to our flat character drawing and compare like scale and shoulder shape and head shape. But then I also have to remember it's going to be a bowl. So the base has to be wide enough so when the bowl is full or empty, the product doesn't tip over. And yeah, it's really cool.
so is it a manufacturer that you're working with?
So it's their overseas companies, their factories are
Hey,
overseas and
yeah.
they do all of that. And so then that's another challenge, opposite schedule. So it's like they email while I'm sleeping and then I have to go in and make sure I respond to everything and think it through because I'm not going to get an answer until the next morning.
Yeah.
It's not like where we communicate back and forth here. So it's like we really have to think about it and not knowing all of the products and stuff. I'm asking so many questions like
This is
how do I say this?
crazy.
I know it's so cool. And it was scary to leave, but I will say I am feeling like so energized and excited and happy. I definitely thought like my path was art director, all that kind of thing. And so I was a little hesitant to go back the design route, but I think it's what I needed. I think
It
it's
sounds
what I
really
didn't know I
cool.
needed.
Yeah, it sounds really like challenging and you're learning something new. And
Yeah.
as creatives, we want that, right? Like we always
Yes.
wanted to do something new. Like we don't like repetition. And I guess because you're working with so many different products and
Hmm.
they must work with all the different seasons too.
Oh yeah.
That
Oh yeah.
it's you're doing something different all the time.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I'm sure
So
you'll get a
it's
grasp out of it. It's like you do your little 3D mug and you figure that out, and it's like it'll be a walk in the park after that.
yeah, but then I have to turn around and I was learning to do beaded placemats, which I've never done.
Oh,
I had
that's
to
a
take,
huge trend that's coming up, eh? All that beadwork
yeah.
and the tufting rug stuff.
Oh, I love that. Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
But
So,
yeah, it's like crazy taking these patterns that they've had forever that people love, simplifying them because you could only have 9 colors and making
oh,
them into beaded stuff and learning how the factory does that and talking with our partners. And it's literally women, I assume women, I guess shouldn't make an assumption, that sit there and bead by hand. So it's
Wow,
so crazy.
that's intense.
Yeah. And it's learning your partners and like when you can rely on them and say, hey, here's our art, here's our style guide. Can you lay it out on the product and seeing if they, sometimes they do good, sometimes they don't. Or I'm like,
It's
here,
interesting. Like, so what's your position called? I'm
product
just
designer.
product designer.
Hmm.
So there's just so many opportunities out there for artists that we don't even think of. And if you just think of like the one thing that you're doing, or even if you think of your team at Williamson, like how many different roles there are in creativity. Now where you're working, all the different roles, even from the front end, back end,
Yeah.
product development, and there are just so many different opportunities for artists, ones that we didn't have like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, like when you're determined, like
Yeah.
Katie, she's like, I ain't doing administration. I'm going to do something creative. Look at all the different crazy jobs you had in
I
design.
know you just have to be open and think like how I have that skill set in some way. How can I transfer the skills that I have into this? And as long as like you're willing and open and can sell yourself on an interview
Yeah.
and explain how you have those skills and how they can be work at that company, people want to teach you. People want to be around people that are excited and hardworking and want to do it.
I think
So
that's definitely the key thing. If you show that you're eager to learn something
yeah,
and willing to learn something, they want to work with you
yeah,
because you don't have to know everything. And we all learn.
yeah,
It's interesting because like even now with my other new partner, it's a whole different field than what you guys do. Like it's a different, I'm learning so much more in art licensing that I never experienced in 20 years of wall decor. Like there's so much. So you don't, even if you kind of have a dream of doing something, whether it's like art licensing or designing, it doesn't mean that you have to like do that particular job right away. You can
yeah,
learn skills to get there along the way by picking up, something in a creative field, even if you are maybe just at the bottom doing something to
yeah.
get put in, and you can use your eyes to like watch, and you start asking questions and want to learn about that, there could be opportunities in that company for you to slide in as a designer or creator. And I
Well,
mean,
like when I started at Williamson, there wasn't even a licensing department. And
were they
another,
printing? Was it just print?
it
Like,
was just, we were designing everything internally. Everything was
really? It was
designed
all
internally.
internal.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. And then when Anne came to the company, she came with the licensing and she was like, oh my God, you guys, we can add we can add a whole lane to the highway because I was like, I was managing the design team. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this, guys. Cause I didn't know much about licensing. I was like, well, isn't that going to nullify all the designers? Like everyone's going to freak out if you bring in all these like other artists and stuff. And she's like, hold on, hold on, hold on. Let me explain it to you. It's just adding a lane to the highway. So we'll still have all our internal design, but now we'll be able to offer stuff like photography, fine art painting that we hadn't done internally. So I stuck up for those girls. I was like, there was only women on the design team. I'm like, oh my gosh, what about all the designers? They're gonna freak out. And it was my mind was blown when we first started because I like you see it, but you don't realize. Like literally for the first 2 months of my job on the licensing team, my husband probably wanted to kill me because I was like, Eric, someone got paid to design this. Someone got paid to design this. Someone got paid to design that. This gift card, I know this. I know this artist who's made this gift card. It's just
a lot of people, like people that are not in the creative industry, that have no clue.
yeah,
Like they think that there's like internal artists for every company just doing their like
yeah,
graphic design. They're not. And even my friend Dee up in Canada, who helped me with my paint line, she had no clue about art licensing either until I introduced. She hired artists to work. She was paying them a salary and commission, like a royalty.
lucky.
Yeah, I'm like, wait a minute, Dee. You gotta do one or the other. She's like, really? I thought she was buying their originals because she thought she had to buy them so that she could put the art on the product. Like, oh yeah, so it's like this triple dipping. I'm like, whoa, sister, this is what you need to do. She's like, I had no idea. So then she revamped everything. She had her in-house artists that design certain things, and then she's got these licensing artists, like a few on her team, me included, that create for her, and she doesn't have to like pay them a salary. She just pays them whatever she sells.
Yep.
So it is a world that a lot of businesses don't know about either, companies. So that's your beautiful job as well. You're something different now, you're a designer, but that's the jobs of these agents and licensing companies to, reach out to companies, new companies, and say, hey, here's opportunity. We can create your packaging, give you art for this, that. There's art needed for everything. Film, television, like sets, home staging, like there's just everything.
You just have to be open and look for it, right?
Open and look for it. Yeah.
I just want to do something creative. I don't necessarily care what it is. And you may end up somewhere where you're like, I had no idea this was a job and this is my vibe. Like, this is what I love. And then you're like, oh, well, I found it. Like, I had no idea and I found it. And I'm going to be content here for a while,
That's awesome. Yeah, that is awesome. So I am just, flipping back and forth here. For some reason, I still can't see the comments in the group.
Oh.
So I'm going to have to post it, and you're in the group anyways. So
Yeah.
if somebody reaches out, we can answer. I always answer. And then next week I'll be live with them by myself, and I'll be able to explain like my lack of technology skills. Thank you. Facebook makes things, well, it's not, I think it's Zoom, and everybody's just making it difficult for you to kind of connect other platforms. So
yeah, Zoom's like, I gave you guys enough in COVID. We need to get something back.
Yeah. We don't want to, and like there's so many loops to go around. Like I'm sitting here, I've got like a YouTube video open, I've got Facebook and Zoom open, and I'm going back and forth with all the steps, and something doesn't work or connect. I don't have anybody to ask why. This is why you need a team. So I got like my marketing team that runs my Facebook group to set me up on this. And then as soon as we figure it out, like a couple weeks later, they change it. So can't win.
I know. We just got to stay with it, right? We got to stay cool.
Just do art. Don't even go on the computer. Come join us, but you can just watch. You don't have to figure this out. But anyways, okay. Katie, thanks so much for joining us. It was such
super fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed hearing your journey, and I'm sure my students will too. And we'll get this posted to the group, and they're going to be really excited to hear everything that you had to share.
Thanks, guys. It was a fun morning.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're happy, and I'm glad it's nice to hear what you're doing. It's something really cool and new, and we'll have to keep in touch, and you'll have to let me know how things are going along the way. Or if you design something, you got to share it with me.
I'm sure that'll bring me back in like a month or two. So
yeah.
Hey, Katie, can you come back at 9 again?
Yeah, come back. Maybe I figured it out, maybe not, but we'll get you on there and share some updates, some cool things because we love to hear like all the different things that you can create and that you're working on. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, love it.
Some new jobs that you figured out that didn't. Anyways. Okay.
All right. You have a great day, guys.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for joining me.
Bye-bye.
Talk soon. Bye.